Well, hey everybody, welcome back to Life with Nana. I'm Nana and I'm so glad you're here today. Today we're making meatball subs. Doesn't that sound good? So the first thing I need to do is to get my bread in my bread machine so that it can get going and do all the rising and all the things that it needs to do. So let me read you the recipe. All right, so I have in here 1 cup plus 3 tablespoons of water. And you put your liquid in the bottom first. I have 2 tablespoons of oil. One and 1/2 teaspoons of salt. And did I do that right? Yes. Add your sugar. All right. And then you are going to add your flour, and I just have some bread flour here, and it is 3 1/4 cup of bread flour. I will put the recipe in the show notes. And you're going to add 2 tablespoons of powdered milk. I think that is something that you should always have in your food stores, is some powdered milk. Keeps forever. 1 box will probably last you, a long, long time. All right, so we're going to pour this in on the top. Make sure we get all that flour out of there. And then we're going to add our yeast, and I'm just using some dry active yeast. And so you want to make a small little indentation in the top. And you're going to pour the yeast into that indentation, and you do not want it to touch the water for some reason. That's just what the instructions from the bread machine stated. All right, so we're going to get this in the bread machine, and we're going to get that going. All I'm doing is making a dough because I'm going to make these into sub rolls, and so I don't want to bake a loaf of bread. I want it to just do the work for me so I can go about my day and do some other things. The bread dough in my bread machine, and it's just going to do its thing over there. And you may hear it kick on. Hopefully I let it get to the phase where it won't do that. But so we're going to get going on these meatballs and get them in the oven. I decided that I would just put them in the oven, and it seemed a lot easier than trying to brown them on top of the stove and then putting them in the crock pot or whatever. The first thing I'm working on here is some onions, and I want to get these chopped up and in my skillet and on my stove. And as you know, anytime I'm in the kitchen doing something like a recipe like this, I like to do a couple of extra things. Usually it's something like this where I go ahead and caramelize some onions. I might make another dessert that can go in the freezer or something like that. Today I don't know exactly what we'll get to. So let me finish up chopping these onions up, and we're going to get those over on the stove. And I have 5 white onions here. I had a bag that had 5 in it, and I've got another bag in there. And so I just decided to use up what was in the bag that was opened. My goal for this year is not to let food go to waste and not to, to just try to use up everything that I've got. And I want to do more homemade things. So I could have went and bought some hoagie rolls or some whatever you call them. Um, but I decided I would make them today. So, right. So that looks like a big pan, right? That looks like a lot of onions. But when I get it when I get it cooked down, it's not gonna be that many. So let me get that on the stove. In this bowl, I have beef and pork, both ground, and it's about 1.5 pounds of each one. This is a tablespoon of salt, a tablespoon of onion powder, a tablespoon of garlic powder, and about a half a teaspoon or maybe a little more of black pepper. Now, I washed my hands, so I'm going to have to get in here and mix this together. And I know that's not a lot of people's favorite thing, but that's just the way you have to do it sometimes. Okay, so the first thing so I've got this in here, so I'm going to put 2 eggs. And I have 1 piece of bread that I've been soaking in milk. So I'm just going to take that out and put that in here. I'm not going to put the milk in there. And here I have about a cup of grated Parmesan cheese. So I'm going to put that in there. And the best way to do this is just get in here with your hands and mix this all together. You can certainly put on gloves if that makes you feel better. I didn't have any gloves to put on, so we're just going to do it this way. Let me wash my hands. So I have a pan here that I've lined with foil. Okay. So I just want to make these into about a golf ball size. And I'm just using a tablespoon or a spoon. I have my oven preheating to 350 degrees. Now, these won't, we won't eat all of these, of course, in the next day or two. So some of these will go in the freezer, and we can get them out and put them in the air fryer. Once you do things like making these, you get the hang of it really quickly. It's kind of like I'm always saying about biscuits and cornbread and that type of thing. You always, if you do it over and over again, you get the hang of it, and it's not that hard to do. So I was looking at my onions, making sure they were doing all right. All right, let's get our other pan over here. And these will probably need to cook 25 to 30 minutes, depending on how big you make them, too. If you do what I'm doing and making them I'm probably making these actually a little bigger than a golf ball, because I think they're going to shrink some. I know they're going to shrink some. Okay, so I'm going to turn my onions up just a little bit, and I'm going to salt them. The salt will help to bring out the fluids and help them get cooked down the way we want them. I'm going to add some peppers to these, but I like for my peppers to stay crunchy, a little crunchier than the caramelized onion, so I'll do that at the end. So it's looking pretty good. So I have my meatballs in the oven on 350. I have the bread in the bread machine, and I have my onions going here. And we're just going to keep chugging along today and see what we can get made. I love old cookbooks, and I found one, and I wanted to try one of the recipes for just plain chocolate chip cookies. And so that's what we're going to do. In this bowl, I have, the recipe calls for 1 1/3 of buttermilk baking mix. Now, I didn't have that, so I just used self-rising flour. And then it called for 1/4 cup of all-purpose flour, which I just added the self-rising flour. I had some powdered buttermilk, and I put about a tablespoon, maybe a little less, in here. So the ingredients call for 2/3 cup of brown sugar packed. I have that right here. And I'm going to break that up, mix that in. So it calls for 1 egg, and I'm just going to give this a slight little, beat it up just a little bit. And it calls for 1/4 cup of butter, softened. Got this in here softened. Now this didn't call for any other liquid, so I'm not sure what they were talking about when they were talking about this baking mix. So what I'm going to do is just add a little cream to this, and we'll see how that does. Okay. Still feels just a little dry to me, so I'm going to put just a little more. All right, and it called for a 6-ounce bag of chocolate chips, and I had some mixed white and milk chocolate in my freezer, so I just weighed that out. We'll just dump them in there and see what we get. So I sprayed my pan with a little bit of nonstick spray, and I have this size little cookie scoop. So we're going to see how these do. We may go back and roll them in our hands. So I wet my hands, and I'm going to take these dough balls, and I'm just going to roll them like that. That way I can get them a little closer together on my pan. We want to give them plenty of room to spread out. Sometimes with these old cookbooks, you have to kind of adapt the recipe a little bit. Sometimes it turns out, sometimes it doesn't. We'll see. All right, so there we have our chocolate chip cookies. And as soon as the meatballs come out of the oven, which should be pretty quickly now, we are going to put these in. I wanted to show you the meatballs once they came out of the oven. They need to cook until they have an internal temperature of 165, which I checked mine, they do. I have this handy little thing. I know it says 78, but it's been cooling for a little while. So this is what they look like. And now I want to show you what the onions are looking like. Remember, this whole pan was covered with onions, really. Once I cut them up, there were 5 big onions. Take a look now. So that'll be good to go on our meatball subs. Okay, the cookies are out of the oven. They look delicious. I'll show them to you in a moment. And our bread is ready to be turned into our hoagie rolls or whatever it is that you want to call them. So keep your fingers crossed that they do well. So what we're going to do is we're going to get them out of the bread maker. We're going to form these, and then we're going to cover them and let them sit for about 30 minutes, and then we'll bake them, and we'll be ready for our lunch. So this is turning out wonderful. I'm really excited. Let me show you how the cookies turned out. Good, huh? They look good. I hope they are good. And they're super hot. Nice and brown on the bottom. They held their shape well. They are really hot. Oh, yeah. See how good that looks in the middle? I'm going to try just a little bite. You know, Nana, she can't resist. Mmm. Those are great. Oh, see how our bread is risen? That's wonderful. Then we're going to just dump this out. Punch it down. I'm going to put a little flour on the top of this. And we're going to knead it just a little bit by hand. You want to try to get 4. This first one I think is too big. So we're going to cut this off just a little. And we're just going to keep going. And then we're going to put a towel on top of these and let them rise. Well, all right. Look at all this. Isn't this wonderful? The sub rows are a little wonky, but Nana's a little wonky, so it doesn't matter. So what we're going to do is we're going to take one of them, and you need a serrated knife. Whew, they just come out of the oven, so they probably would have been better if I'd let them cool off just a little bit. Great texture on the inside. I don't know if you can see that. Whew, look at that heat coming off there. All right, so I'm going to take just a little bit of marinara and put on mine. Both sides. A little bit of cheese. I'm going to put my 3 little meatballs on here. Add just a little Parmesan on top. And I'm going to do some peppers and onions. A little more marinara. Oh, look how wonderful. All right. I'm glad you came by today to hang out with me in the kitchen. I'm so proud of you for everything that you do. Nana loves you so much. Remember, you always have a friend here. I love you. Mwah.